I am the president of the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Association and a PhD candidate at Swinburne. I would like to acknowledge the Yuungamber language holders of the Bundjalung Nation on which we stand, and acknowledge my elders, the Wiradjuri people of New South Wales, and also the Kapuna and elders of Hawaii. Thank you. NATSIPA is the National Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Postgraduate Association. Our membership is made up of Indigenous postgrad students and honours students. We encompass honours students as well because they do research. Non-Indigenous student supporters and Indigenous elders and alumni. So we have various memberships just to create that supportive environment for our students. Our membership is free and individual, and that means that, say, for NUS and for Kappa, membership is automatic if you belong to one of their affiliates, which is the postgraduate or student associations on campus. That doesn't work so well with us because we're such a small cohort. So it's much, much better for us to actually reach out to students individually and those students be members. And also because of the policies and procedures of university, student associations might not actually know the Indigenous students on campus. A lot of Indigenous student contact is through centres or schools, Indigenous centres or schools. They're the ones that actually know the Indigenous students on campus. So it's much better for us to go through that process. So we write submissions, we do press releases, we follow along and fight with the government on various policies. For example, at the moment, as you would probably know, ITES funding has finished. So ITES funding has been round up and it's been put into a competitive tenure process. And so now various units, associations, schools, universities have whatever they've been able to gain from that tenure process, and it's a lump sum that they're then paid and they've got to figure out how to work with it. So for example, the university that I visited recently, University of Southern Queensland, they're actually employing full-time support people within their unit, and so students will have ITAS tutoring, but it'll actually be a full-time staff member that's there just for that specific reason, which is actually probably a really good way to go about it. There's students can come in for a lot longer time. Of course, we advise that's okay. We advise best practice, give information to students on scholarships, and just generally assist students. And now this is an example that's more a general student. However, I was in a Krispy Kreme one night. A couple of years ago, I think I'd actually just finished a Kappa thing. 3 of us on here are various Kappa people. I just finished something to do with Kappa and I was very student orientated, rights. And I got talking to the barista. And the barista, it turns out, was also a PhD student. She was a PhD student who was dropping out. And she was dropping out because she could not deal with her supervisor. Her and her supervisor were just at completely different lengths. And the university at no point had told her she can change supervisors. She didn't know she was allowed to. And so she was choosing to leave university altogether because she thought that was the only person she was allowed to associate with. And that's a story a lot of students actually have. Either they don't know they can change or they want to bring in a second supervisor and their primary supervisor says no. And I know students that's happened to as well. They're like, no, you're my student, you're not bringing anybody else. And so that's what they do. And so we're really there to make sure that the students know that, you know what, you can change supervisors, you can have different supervisors, you've got funding sources. The majority of universities have a various amount of funding per year that a PhD student can access. A lot of students don't know that. So it's just basic information that I think universities, it's not a malice thing, I just think that they assume students know it. And they just don't. Some of them really don't. So about my PhD, as I said, my PhD is called Nothing About Us Without Us, Protecting Indigenous knowledges through oral histories and culturally safe research practices. I have a very interesting PhD. My PhD started at Monash University. I did my undergraduate, my honours, and the start of my PhD at Monash University Gippsland. However, Monash University Gippsland recently turned into Federation University Australia, which is still a fantastic, amazing campus. However, my supervisor is high intense research. So he got out of there, and I followed him. So I went to University of South Australia, where I started and was only there a few months before I undertook my Fulbright. However, the Indigenous College at University of South Australia was shut down recently, which, I mean, University of South Australia, I also really, really enjoyed. It was an amazing university, but once again, he got out of there. And so my supervisor is now a professor in the PVC's Education's office with a stipulation in his contract that he doesn't have to teach for 5 years. And so now I'm at Swinburne, which is also a really lovely, lovely university. And I think the thing with that is you've just got to take the good with the bad. And I've really learnt so much from all three universities. I've learnt how to be a high intense researcher. I've learnt how to be young and hip. I've learnt how to be rural, a city. It's encompassed all of my research, and so my research has actually gained from that, and it's actually a better PhD because I've had to adhere to 3 different universities' codes. I've had to adhere to 3 different universities' ethics committees. I know how to do the paperwork quite well by now. And my PhD has also spent a year at an American university, University of Hawaii, where I undertook my Fulbright. So that also was an incredibly amazing experience for me. I had, as I said before, I had kapuna, so elders. I learned a little bit of Alelo Hawaii. I mean, I can say, Avai ko uinoa, or Sadie ko uinoa. What is your name? My name is Sadie. I can do some hula and chant Oli. And that was a really amazing experience for me. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that I was an Aboriginal girl going to a Pacific Island country. And so I was kind of taken under the wing as another Indigenous person. And yeah, you need to see the twists and turns as a positive and actually make sure that your supervisor relationship is something that's actually going to benefit both of you, because at the end of the day, it's not just the supervisor whose research it is, it's your research. And you need to really make sure that your research is actually for you. And I think one of the main things that I really take out of my experience is we really need to make sure we don't dehumanise. Because time and time again, particularly with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander research that's done, it ends up sounding like you're talking about, like, and I don't know how to say it nicely, it ends up sounding like you're not talking about a human being anymore. And that's really, really important, that when you're doing research about somebody, make sure that they still sound like they're a human being. Make sure that you don't, when you're taking away their name, you don't also take away their humanity. Because my research really is on making sure that the people still own their own copyright, the people still own their own intellectual property, and that we as researchers aren't going in and taking all their knowledge and publishing under our name in books with our names on them, with the intellectual property owned by our universities, and the communities can go and buy the book about themselves, but it doesn't necessarily belong to them. Thank you so much.
We'll have questions at the end.